Hi there. September 13 this year in 2019 happens to fall on a Friday, so it's Friday the 13th. And on this day in history, September 13, in the year 335, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was consecrated in Jerusalem. In 1660, English novelist Daniel Defoe was born. He wrote Robinson Crusoe. In 1851, the U.S. Army physician and bacteriologist who proved mosquitoes transmit yellow fever, Walter Reed, was born in Belroy, Virginia. You may have heard that name before. There's a hospital named after him. In 1857, Milton S. Hershey, American chocolate tycoon of the Hershey Chocolate Company and philanthropist, was born in Derry Township, Pennsylvania. In 1860, John J. Pershing, American general and World War I commander, was born in Laclede, Missouri. In 1862, Union troops discover rebels' Antietam battle plan. The Union soldiers found a copy of Confederate General Robert E. Lee's orders detailing the Confederates' plan for the Antietam campaign near Frederick, Maryland. Unfortunately, Union General George B. McClellan was slow to act, and the advantage the intelligence provided was lost. Lee, who was alerted to the approaching Federals, sent troops to plug the gaps, allowing him time to gather his scattered units. In 1903, the beautiful actress Claudette Colbert was born in Paris. In 1916, the author Roald Dahl was born in South Wales. He wrote his first book, The Gremlins, for Walt Disney in 1943. The story was later made into a Disney film. He wrote several popular adult books, including Someone Like You in 1953, Kiss Kiss in 1959, and began writing stories for his own 4 children in 1960. James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory became bestsellers. He also wrote the screenplay for Charlie. With the title change, the movie was called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, 1968, and even a James Bond film, You Only Live Twice, in 1967. Mr. Dahl died in 1990 at the age of 74. In 1940, Italy invades Egypt. Italy had occupied Libya since 1912, a purely economic expansion. In 1935, Mussolini sent tens of thousands of Italians to Libya, mostly farmers and other rural workers, in part to relieve overpopulation concerns. So by the time of the outbreak of the Second World War, Italy had enjoyed a long-term presence in North Africa, and Mussolini began dreaming of expanding their presence, always with an eye toward the same territories the old Roman Empire had counted among its conquests. Chief among these was Egypt. So, on September 13, 1940, Mussolini's forces finally crossed the Libyan border into Egypt, achieving what he called the glory Italy had sought for 3 centuries. But there were British troops in Egypt. They were there under a 1936 treaty and garrisoned there to protect the Suez Canal and the Royal Navy bases at Alexandria and Port Said. Mussolini believed the British troops in Egypt were vulnerable because of the Blitz going on back in London, and so announced to his generals his plans to make the move into Egypt. General Rodolfo Graziani, the brutal governor of Ethiopia, another Italian colony, disagreed, believing that Italy's Libya forces were not strong enough to wage an offensive across the desert. Graziani also reminded Mussolini that Italian claims of air superiority in the Mediterranean were nothing more than propaganda. But Mussolini had big pride and insisted they move forward with his invasion. I have a feeling this didn't go quite the way he wanted. Hey, in 1965, the Beatles released Yesterday. In 1969, Scooby-Doo Where Are You by Hanna-Barbera debuts on CBS in the U.S. And I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those pesky kids. In 1971, well, the other day I told you about the riots at Attica Prison in New York. You may remember that I mentioned that it didn't end well and that we'd be hearing more about it in the days to come. Well, this is that day. On a rainy Monday morning of September 13th, an ultimatum was read to the inmates, calling on them to surrender. They responded by putting knives against the hostages' throats. After that, helicopters flew over the yard and dropped tear gas as state police and corrections officers stormed in with guns ablazing. The police fired 3,000 rounds into the tear gas haze, killing 29 inmates and 10 of the hostages and wounding 89. To make matters worse, authorities tried to say the inmates had killed the slain hostages, but autopsies showed that these charges were false and that all 10 hostages had been shot in the blind hail of gunfire by the police. This attempted cover-up increased public condemnation of the raid and prompted a congressional investigation. Things got even uglier than all that before they started to clear up. Eventually, New York State settled a class action lawsuit filed by the Attica inmates against prison and state officials. For their suffering during the raid and in the weeks following, the former and current inmates accepted $8 million. 1990. On September 13, 1990, the drama series Law and Order premiered on NBC. It would go on to be one of the longest-running primetime dramas in TV history and spawn several popular spin-offs. According to the now famous Law and Order formula, the first half of the hour-long program, set in New York City, focuses on the police as they investigate a crime, often inspired by real-life news stories, while the second part of the show centers on the prosecution of those accused of that crime. Each episode opens with the narrator stating, "In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups, the police, who investigate crime, and the district attorneys, who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories." Law & Order's 20th and final season ended on May 24, 2010. The Law & Order franchise was created by Dick Wolf, who was born in 1946 and began his television career as a writer for such shows as Miami Vice. 1993, Israel-Palestine peace accord signed. After decades of bloody animosity, representatives of Israel and Palestine met on the south lawn of the White House and signed a framework for peace. There's certainly a lot more leading up to the story, and you can read about it at the link in the description. Other than that, I don't know what else to say about it, because it seems like there's still plenty of bickering and hard feelings. But at least they tried. 1996. On this day in 1996, hip-hop star Tupac Shakur died of the gunshot wounds suffered in a Las Vegas drive-by shooting a few days earlier. 2004. On September 13, 2004, TV talk show host Oprah Winfrey gave a brand new Pontiac G6 sedan worth $28,500 to everyone in her studio audience, a total of 276 cars in all. Oprah had told her producers to fill that crowd with people who desperately needed the cars, and when she announced the prize by jumping up and down, waving a giant key ring, and yelling, "Everybody gets a car," mayhem, crying, screaming, delirium, fainting broke out all around her. Apparently there was a "hey, wait a minute" moment, though, when it was discovered that Oprah herself didn't actually buy the cars. They were donated by Pontiac, paying a hefty price out of its advertising budget, because the company hoped that the giveaway would drum up some enthusiasm for its new G6 line. They had satellite radios and fancy navigation systems. The car company also paid the state sales tax on each of the automobiles it donated. However, that still left the new car recipients with a large bill for their supposedly free vehicles in the form of state and federal income taxes. which added up to about $6,000 for most winners. Some people paid the taxes by taking out car loans. Others traded their new Pontiacs for cheaper, less souped-up cars. It's not really a free car, one winner said. It's more like a 75% off car. Of course, that's still not such a bad deal. So it's nice that the recipients seemed generally grateful. The next time Oprah did a big giveaway, she made sure it included a check to help with the taxes. Yes, expensive gifts like that can be considered income and subject to income tax. In any case, these giveaways were great for Oprah's ratings, earned her some of the highest ratings in the program's history. The Oprah Winfrey Show ran for 24 consecutive seasons, ending in May 2011. So thank you so much for watching. And we have links in the description below to the This Day in History story that I mentioned, and also the On This Day, where I get more information about birthdays. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And feel free to share this video if you found it interesting. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. American Chocolate Tycoon. This paper's thick, so it feels like there's two sheets. General Rodolfo Grassi. It's in my head, but I'm not going to sing it. Don't make me squeak that pig again. Mean mama.